when you came in. We have a little internal business to take care of, and then we have 2 requests before the board. One is by Lucky Lucky LLC. There are 4 variance requests on basically dimensional issues. And we have John and Nancy Lacey, who are appealing notice of violation for an impound lot. All right, I'd like to call our meeting to order. It's 5:30 for Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. Anyone wishing to offer testimony with respect to either one of these variance requests before the board, please rise, stand, and raise your right hand. You affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, I do. Thank you. The other thing I would point out is when you come to the podium to speak, please state your name and your address for the record, please. Okay, one small bit of internal business. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Motion to accept as presented.
I'll second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Okay, the first petition before the board will be by Lucky Lucky LLC.
Good evening, Mike Sanford, 4721 Atlantic Avenue. I'm the land surveyor that put together the plan and the application. So I'm here tonight along with Lucky Singh to present information in support of this requested variances for the property at the northeast corner of Edinburgh Road in Hershey. The applicant seeking 4-dimensional variances, as you mentioned, and to construct a gasoline service station on the property. Our submitted variance application provided a lot of details on exhibit and background, but for purposes of this hearing, if you don't mind, I'll just go through the hardships and the various things just so the record's complete. The 4 requested variances, the first one is the proposed landscaping does exceed the overall 30% that your ordinance requires. The proposed perimeter is about 50% provided when only 25% is needed by your ordinance. However, the proposed internal green space is about 2% and 5% is required. So what we're requesting is a variance to reduce the internal green space from 5% to 2%, but that difference would be provided more than provided in the perimeter green space. So on this project, there is a few areas of internal green space. I can see if your pointer works. Yes. So we have this larger area here, this large oval, the northern end, and then we have an end cap island here and an end cap island here. Just the way the maneuvering works for this whole site, there just is with the gasoline trucks that come in and out and people with the boats and trailers, those are the only real internal green space we can provide, and that represents about 2%. But like I said, we're setting aside the remainder in the perimeter. The second variance is that the off-street parking, according to your ordinance, off-street parking in the front of the development cannot exceed more than 10%. Well, this triangle lot, it's basically all front yard. So there just is really no way to comply with putting the parking, if you will, behind the building. So I just don't know that your ordinance contemplated a strange lot like this, and I will go through the hardship in a little bit. But just because there's corner lot, because of this acute angle, because of the large setbacks, it just gets us in this situation. We have to provide the parking in essentially the front yard. The third variance is we propose, he would like to construct some EV charging stations as an amenity to his customers, and we have them proposed here along the southern side along Hershey Road. And so those would essentially be accessory uses. The main building complies with all the setbacks, the canopy complies with all the setbacks, and we actually chamfered this corner of the canopy, if you look real close, to comply with the setback. But the EV charging stations, we needed to put those somewhere on site that was convenient, but yet kind of out of the way, so that people can park there, but yet the customers to the building can come and go as they need to. So what we're requesting is that they would be located along the Hershey Road side of the development, but within the front yard setback. So we would like to reduce the front yard setback for those EV charging stations from the 100 foot that's required from center line to 50 foot provided, essentially resulting in a 50-foot variance being requested. The fourth variance is that the proposed pole sign, and that's, he would like to locate it out here along Edinburgh Road. He has quite a bit of frontage on Edinburgh Road, but a lot of it, this is the rain garden for our stormwater control. So that's why we've placed the sign just a little bit south of that, close to the intersection. And our variance is that that pole sign, so it's not a monument sign, it would be a pole sign, would be, but your ordinance says anything exceeding 48 square feet needs to be located behind the setback line. Well, the setback line for Edinburgh Road is way back here. It's 125 feet from center. So this sign is located within the front yard setback. So what we would like to do is reduce the required minimum setback for the sign from 125 foot from center line to 45 foot, resulting in an 80-foot variance. But the sign would comply with the 10-foot clear span, so you can look under the sign. It doesn't pose a traffic concern. You can see under it. So we do understand that a land development plan is required for this proposed building and parking and development, but approval of these variances needs to be considered before we can submit that land development plan to the township. So as you're aware, your zoning hearing board is authorized to vary from strict application if strict application would deprive the owner of reasonable use of his land. So just again, for purpose of this meeting, to have the record complete, your ordinance requires 5 criteria to be met, and I just want to go through those real quick. The first is that the property, there are unique physical circumstances or irregularity in the lot shape that's peculiar to this property. I think that's self-evident. It's this acute angle, lots and lots of frontage, and so I think this unique triangular shape is subject to large setbacks from both streets. They're both collector streets. I think that presents a unique physical challenge to the property. Number 2 is that because of these physical circumstances, there's no possibility the property could be developed in strict conformity with your ordinance. And as I mentioned, because of the stated physical condition, there is no possibility that this development could be constructed in strict conformity to allow the owner reasonable use of his property. Therefore, we are requesting 4-dimensional variances. The third is that the necessary hardship has not been created by the applicant. So in this case, the applicant did not create the parcel shape. He purchased it, but he did not create the parcel shape. He did not create the zoning ordinance, which essentially requires these large setbacks, and so therefore the hardship is not created by the applicant. Number 4 is that the variance, if authorized, would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district, or substantially or permanently impair appropriate use of adjacent property. And so in this case, this is I believe this is MUN, if I recall correctly, zoning, so it's neighborhood. And so this is a permitted use. Your ordinance was just redone fairly recently, so these variances are not contrary to the ordinance in terms of affecting other properties negatively. And that number 5, and the final hardship we need to explain is that the variance, if authorized, would represent the minimum variance to afford relief. And so we looked at this plan every way to Sunday. We looked at different options, how we could put it, where the building could go, where the parking could go. We looked at this a lot, different iterations. And the plan we presented tonight is really the minimum to afford relief. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, a couple. First of all, this charging station is fairly close to the center line of the road. Are you planning to put some protection against those as far as like posts or anything? For someone, maybe speeding or something and coming in there and hitting those?
If that's a concern, we certainly can address that concern. What I can tell you is, I don't have a scale with me, but I would estimate those charging stations are about 35 horizontal feet from the edge of pavement. Certainly they're close to the right-of-way line, but from the actual edge of pavement of Hershey Road, which is shown on that drawing, this is the edge of pavement of Hershey Road right here. And so what I can tell you is the distance from the EV stations to the right-of-way line, that's 20 feet. So then this is just at least another 10 or 15. So I'd estimate these charging stations to be about 35 feet from the edge of pavement. But your comments heard, and we have no issue with placing a bollard behind those as further protection. So it absolutely could be done.
All right, the second question I have is, you know, this is supposed to be back 100, you got 45, or a little more. Can you move that sign back into the center of that area? It's a pole sign, I assume. How big is it?
How big is it?
That hasn't been determined. All I know is it's more than 48 square feet. It hasn't been actually identified, that.
You know, maybe somewhere in there, is it a possibility?
Yeah, I just asked my client there, and
My reason for asking those questions and any other one is safety. You know, someone traveling too fast, ice, something, and they go off the road, and I'd like, because you're bringing things out closer, I'd like to make sure that it's protected.
sure. I will also add to that safety thing. It doesn't show on this plan, but your ordinance in MUN requires quite a lot of plantings along the road here, and so there will be trees and shrubs along here as well. Now, those would be certainly lower than the sign that's up in the air. So I'm just saying there will be some trees and shrubs planted along the road frontages because your ordinance requires that. But, you know, I mean, we placed this sign here, it is outside this 20-foot buffer, but if there's a concern, we want to hear that concern. And if the sign needs to move back another 15 feet, I'm hearing your concern.
So how far is that, Mike, from the edge of Edinburgh Road to where you're suggesting that?
From the edge of the pavement to here?
Yeah.
Well, this is 20 feet from here to the black line.
Okay,
So I would estimate 25 or so from the edge of pavement.
I didn't have
And I just thought was the sign, just like we talked about the EV station and the potential concern of cars coming off and putting, we could put bollards there to protect them. We could do the same with the sign. If the sign stayed in this position we're talking about, we could put bollards around the poles as well.
Is that all the questions we have?
I have no others.
Is there anybody else out there who wishes to offer testimony with respect to these requests? Anyone? Being none, we're going to take these variances one at a time if you don't mind. Do I have a motion on the first variance of reducing from 5 to 2% internal landscaping?
I'll make a motion that we accept the variance of 5% interior to 2%.
I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Second request, exceeding the 10% parking up front.
I would suggest a variance to the off-street parking requirement to not exceed the 10% of the required spaces.
But they may exceed
That
that.
may exceed the 10%.
Okay, I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the setback for the EV stations,
I'll make a motion that we accept the reduction in the front yard setback with the caveat of having some kind of protection on Hershey Road for those EV machine or EV stations.
okay, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And finally, the setback for the pole sign.
I would make a motion that we accept the variance for the sign structure in excess of 48 square feet, that it not have to be placed behind the building, but placed in the spot that they're presented.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very well, that concludes the request for our first petition.
Welcome to Summit.
Okay, our second one.
Thank you.
John and Nancy Lacy.
Good evening. My name is Gary Tupsky, and I'm the attorney representing John and Nancy Lacy in case 2025000025. My understanding is that as of last Monday, February 17th, 2025, Summit Township has added impound lot as a permitted use as outlined in Table 311.10 of the Summit Township zoning ordinance As such, petitioners John and Nancy Lacy ask that the notice of violation issued to them on January 3rd, 2025 be rescinded and the appeal quashed as moot.
Very well. Thank you.
And just for the record, Ms. Cass, does the township intend to withdraw its notice of violation?
Yes.
So then, I guess I would have the board approve it. Upon withdrawal of the notice of violation, the appeal would be rendered moot with the property owner's consent.
So based on that, I make a motion that with the information presented tonight, that the appeal be presented, be moot at this point.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That concludes the business. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Aye, second. All in favor?
Aye.